Rewarding from the top down is important as well. But what about punishment? Because one red flag perhaps for unethical behavior is the attitude, it's only the little person, the low end of the employment scale, the lower rank and file worker who gets punished. They always seem to get away with it at the upper management. How can an organization avoid its employees thinking that?
I would say you have to be living this all the time at all levels of the organization, and there just aren't exceptions. It's not like a senior vice president can be less ethical than, in our case, a dishwasher or a housekeeper. It's just it's in the DNA of the organization, I think, or it's not. And I think that's the key. Is that you just there is no difference. It is you treat everybody the same, regardless of position or where they come from or any of those kinds of things. I think that's the key from our view.
And we get that complaint quite often in our office where our employees will come forward with complaints about senior leadership and feel that the disciplinary action or corrective actions are different when you're a senior leader than when you are a more junior person in the organization. And we try to dispel them of that notion, just as was said here, when there's no difference. If you are engaging in unethical conduct, then the corporation has to take action to address those concerns that we have. And you can look no further back than, I guess, maybe 3 or 4 years, I forget when, but our most senior person in the corporation was an individual who was supposed to take over as our president of Lockheed Martin, was in line to take over the position, and he was removed from that position because he had an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. The #1 position in Lockheed Martin. And the company took action, investigated that case just as they would any other case, and when they found it was substantiated, they did take action where that person did not take over as our head of the corporation.
Sometimes an employee might want to report wrongdoing, but they may be afraid. What challenges are there in that, and how can you incentivize an employee to actually report? I think we'll start with TJ on that.
That's another thing that we constantly face in our organization, is trying to let individuals know when they come forward with their questions or concerns or complaints that there will be no retaliation. We have a speak up culture, and we want people to come forward with their ethical concerns. But again, it's human nature that they believe if they come forward, they will be tagged as they're afraid of how they're going to be viewed within the organization if they're characterized as a whistleblower. They're afraid of someone taking action against them to retaliate against them for coming forward. And when we talk about retaliation, we're talking about individuals who will take action or take inappropriate actions against someone for coming forward. So they're always concerned about those sorts of things. So we let people know that we have zero tolerance for retaliation. If you can show that someone has retaliated against you, then we take appropriate corrective actions against that individual who has retaliated against you. But there's another concern with regard, even if you get that message out, there's still going to be those who believe that yes, you can say that, but the retaliation doesn't take overt forms. It's a covert way. They don't invite me to meetings when I should be at meetings. I don't get invited to lunch with the team when everyone else is being invited to those events. I didn't get that promotion that I think I should have been in line for. So if employees are still concerned about being identified for coming forward, we do give them the option when they come forward to be confidential. And we try to keep their identities, we try to protect their identities as much as we can to the maximum extent possible while we're conducting We also have helplines, where you can call in and you can be anonymous if you call in on the helpline. So that should kind of lessen the impact of an employee believing that they will be retaliated against, especially if they call in and don't leave their name and are able to report that. So those are some of the techniques we use, or some of the options we use to try to address that concern when employees feel that coming forward may result in some adverse consequences for them.
Thank you, Nick.
I'm gonna ask TJ how effective the anonymous helpline is, because I have a real live example at my board of directors in our last board meeting, which was this summer, suggested that we institute this anonymous hotline to get unethical behavior reported. And I said, well, that seems counter to our culture, right? Because there's this kind of idea that if you really have an open and transparent culture, if you're really treating people with respect, if people really believe that the organization is ethical, that they will come forward, they won't be afraid to come forward. And of course, my board was pounding on me to say, you're living in Shangri-La, that's not true. People are scared, and so we had this really robust debate, but there's a real life example of something that just happened to me. I've been the CEO of the company for 32 years, and we just, so here, I think you constantly are getting these challenges, these ideas, that is this a good idea or not? It's lots and lots of, by the way, companies, particularly, I think companies like Lockheed, more so than companies like ours necessarily. Doesn't make it good or bad, but it's an interesting idea, a good debate to have, I think, in an organization, because it does send a certain message of trust. I think it might be subtle, but if you, when you go into like fast food places, they, have these signs in the bag that says, if you see somebody stealing, call 1-800, rat out your fellow employee. Like, that freaks me out. Like when I said, oh my God, that's not the culture we want to have in our organization. Now, of course, that's not what Lockheed does, and most organizations probably implement it really, really well. But I do think it's a great, I think it's an interesting debate, and something that we're live wrestling with.
Well, I'll kind of respond to, how we look at those anonymous complaints. They do make it more difficult to have an investigation or have a case when it's anonymous, because normally if someone comes in as an identified reporting party, we can talk to them again, clarify what the issue is, what the concern is. When it's an anonymous complaint, you just have to kind of take it at face value, what you're getting, and try to do what you can with it. But the reason that we have anonymous complaint or anonymous reporting is because we're trying to get to the underlying conduct. And if we have employees who are concerned about coming forward with a complaint, we would rather have them come forward anonymously so we can handle the complaint than they're not come forward at all. But again, it just makes it more difficult, and in many cases when it is anonymous, we just don't have enough information to actually substantiate what the allegation is in a particular case.
I just wanted to follow up with Walter. Thank you for that. Walter, did you institute the hotline? Did the board make a decision?
Not yet. The board, the board has not forced me to do it yet, but they wouldn't force me. Like for us, it's really so when you think about this, one of the things that I said was, so what are we going to have a bunch of bartenders calling up and saying, or cocktail waitresses or waiters, hey, I work at blah blah restaurant and Joe the bartender is giving away free drinks. It does happen, by the way.
What's the name of the restaurant?
It does happen. We recognize that it does. But so like, I'm having a hard time getting my arms around my head around all that. But we have not instituted it yet.
Moisha?
I think somebody had their hand up over here. My simple statement was going to be, because you feel wrong does not mean you were the victim of some unethical behavior. And what it sounds like is going on here is that you're trying to catch the in-between, the employees who feel wronged to the all the way to the employees who really were ethically bad. So it seems as though with the disruption to the culture or the team atmosphere, it's when people feel wrong that things really go awry. It's not necessarily if there has or hasn't been anything unethical that's occurred. So yeah, I'll just throw that out there. The data would suggest that when team work and collaboration really is thwarted is when people feel wrong. So this all goes back to why ethics is such a hard thing to argue, is it's a very aesthetic experience. We each have our individual ethic of what's right and wrong, that we then have to match up with a partner, that we then have to match up with a small group, our team, and then finally our whole organization. So by the time you include all of those people, that's a lot of different ethics that I'll try to convince you to call perspectives by the end of my little spiel. But that's a lot of ethics to consider all at once. So allowing for people to realize that they're feeling wronged, while it may not be unethical, counts and matters to your organization, I think is important. And probably is a very important piece to what your anonymous hotline is doing. Right? How many times do you feel better after you're like, girl, you will never believe what he did, me, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, why did I call? I gotta go. Right? So sometimes it's just that act of, really, I mean, we're at the end of the day, I'm like doing behaviors, right? So I'm looking at where the behavior shifts. And there's a huge behavioral shift when people are, going back to emotion, when people are emotionally charged, they can only be met with an emotional soothing. That's the only thing that's gonna make them feel better. And most systems aren't equipped to make that, oh, hi, right? So
We'll make sure that you don't answer our hotline.
no, obviously, yeah, right, I'm not gonna do that. But I hope that makes sense, right? So this feeling of being infringed upon is so important, but there's not much room for it. There's not much room for it, but it's definitely what gets us in trouble most of the time, at least in, like you were saying, the mundane workday.
And people want their kids to be followed up on.